All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. As we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to discuss the latest offseason news and rumors in New York Mets land. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for new episodes of our show that are going to be recorded live now regularly every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time during the off season. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all that great stuff. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. You're just going to be starred throughout the show. We'll try to pull up as many comments as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. For those of you in here, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X, on TikTok for more content over there. And for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day. Also, make sure to give us a 5-star review. It would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 175 of our show. And obviously, we've got this offseason looming with postseason games going on that the Mets are obviously not participating in. And, we have tons of external to talk about eventually, but we're obviously keeping it internal at the moment until the World Series is done. Maybe we'll get into some other stuff later on. But Frank, you were not here for the last episode that we did, which was kind of our first non-regular season episode that we did. So it's been a while since we've all been on here because it's once a week now. But it's in the wake of the Mets. The Mets aren't in the postseason, so lots of
I
thinking
haven't
to do.
seen them. Yeah,
Haven't
I've
seen
not
them.
seen their uniforms in quite some time. Did not play any October baseball games, but there still is a lot of work that they're still doing right now. While other teams are playing, the offseason has officially started for them, making these moves. We'll see what else they do. At least they've gotten some things addressed. They still have some more things to do, and we're obviously going to get more into it in depth. But it's a start. But there's definitely still a lot of work to do, not only on the coaching side, but also player personnel. We're going to talk about that too. So it's going to be a busy offseason for them, and it needs to be with how this season went. I mean, no matter, you can't say it enough, but it was such a disappointment and such a failure based off of expectations, not that much of an injury excuse for where they ended up and missing the postseason, despite how not great of a record you needed to make it in the National League. There's just no excuses. So in order to prevent that from repeating itself, they need to do multiple things this offseason. They've started, but they still have more to do.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of things that they need to obviously accomplish. And Andrew, you were here last time, obviously, and we were talking about how during this offseason, they're going to have a decent amount of discussions that maybe you're going to make Mets fans uncomfortable because there are a lot of questions that need to be asked, for them going forward of this team. And there's a narrow window of changes that they can make with some of these guys that are locked in that we've already said. So Andrew, from a car right now, I think this is the first Mets Weekly episode ever done from a car. So you're making history here.
Always doing
The
it.
outlook on the outlook on the off season. I mean, plenty to do.
Yeah, again, as the World Series, not World Series, as the playoffs are getting done, at least you get your coaching staff. How many times have we seen Mets coaching searches go past winter meetings, and we're still looking for managers or filling coaching position? I like, obviously Stearns is getting proactive and getting his guys, and again, a big thing we talked about last week. It's David Stearns getting his guys, getting rid of the holdovers, getting rid of the guys that have been here with term. Stearns is getting his people that he wants running the team, so that team can be run his way in the dugout, as well as obviously he's done that in the front office. And yeah, we're gonna have some very uncomfortable conversations. On our little lineup today, where there's the conversation that is always the most uncomfortable for Mets fans. But again, you're gonna need to rid some roster turnover. You can't run it back. You could say that like maybe a team down the turnpike just wants to keep running it back and consistently getting worse and worse. You don't want to end up like that. So you need to know not everything doesn't need a foundational change, but you do need to make some adjustments to your roster. You cannot run this team back. And again, from everything we've heard from Stearns and obviously seeing the coaching staff, they're not going to go, let's just go 2 inches deep. They want to go 2 yards. They were going for a touchdown. They're not trying to make a little completion. They're making complete overhauls. And again, it starts in the coaching staffs, and then we'll see what he does once free agency opens up, what the roster foundation looks like.
Yeah, so we saw actually the first player change or the player add yesterday. They brought in a lefty side armor who's got a 10-degree arm angle. So Joe Jacques, is that how I say it? I guess that's how we say it. I guess we're going to say it like that right now.
Roll with that.
He's obviously a minor league contract. And before everybody, jumps the gun and says that, they're dumpster diving, this is the only thing they can do right now. They can only sign minor league contracts. So let's relax. But, as for some of you guys in the chat, before we get into here, we have Radiant, we have Matt in the chat as well. We've got Alex as well. Our friend Ibby. Ibby is excited to see Rhino in the car as well. And also we're saying run it back. Yeah, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that, I'm not going to sit here and say this team isn't perfect. I mean, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, listen, there is plenty of moves that need to be made, obviously, in this offseason, plenty of upgrades that need to be made. But there was one move that already had to be made, and it was made. But for some reason, we are still on subject about it as of right now. To be honest, I did not want to really talk about this at all because I feel like leaving it in the past at this point. But there were so many prominent things that were discussed here. And at least in redeeming quality, I can say these few words, and that being former Mets hitting coach Eric Chavez went on foul territory earlier this week and had some comments about, the environment of him working with the Mets, some individual players as well. He talked a lot about the whole situation in the clubhouse and everything. Because, he likes to be very, very vocal. And obviously, whenever you're talking about when you lose your job, like all of us do, we go on podcasts and scream about it. So I want to get into some of these comments that he did have, which I think at this point we're all just asking, and this is going to be the title of this graphic, asking, do you ever shut up? But anyways, on behalf of the Mets coaching staff getting fired, which he was asked at the beginning, saying that I don't think any of the coaches should have been fired, to be honest with you, but understanding the nature of the beast and how things work weeks prior to this, I knew this was coming. Is it fair? No. But when you sign up for this job, it's kind of what comes with it. You're in a big market like New York. The owner spends $800 million. Your team better make some noise. For the coaching staff, it was unbelievable. Things just didn't go our way. The coaching staff was a steadfast, I'll go to bat for any of those guys any day. Now, there was obviously one thing that I think a lot of Mets fans took away from them letting go of Barnes and Chavez, and that being the concept of them having co-hitting coaches. And the main reason as to why it may seem a little strange, you have a little bit of multiple teams that do it, in now, obviously, of two different guys sending the message, but they asked him about the concept of it's more this new age of co-hitting coaches. And they asked, saying that Barnes and I did a really good job of speaking. We did a really good job for speaking for guys who spoke different languages, believed in certainly different things, coming from two different worlds and making it work together for the better of the group. We may have looked at each other and thought, man, this guy is full of it, or I disagree with him, or we made sure we brought it to the group that him and I were on the same page. The only thing is you cannot have two head hitting coaches. Players get confused that when there's multiple voices. I tried to give Jeremy his space because he did so much, and the players were very accustomed to him being in the leadership role. And when I left to be the bench coach for that 1 year under Buck, and then I came back into the hitting coach role, Jeremy had established himself and his voice. So to make it work, I kind of gave him his space. He was also asked about Francisco Alvarez, who was a big topic of discussion for want to say his downfall, but I would just say the concept and a lot of these reports that we were getting from behind the scenes of Eric Chavez working with Francisco Alvarez. And he said, I told him 2 years ago, he hit 25 home runs. People look at his batting. You look at his batting profile and there was some things that weren't so sexy about it, but everybody falls in love with homers. Oh, 25 homers. This is great. And I kind of challenged him to be a more complete hitter. This offseason, he revamped his swing. Players are always looking to get better. They're always looking for that next great thing. The way I viewed things for getting better was for him to be more consistent. You are who you are as a player. All of us have God-given abilities and you have to tap into those. I think what's wrong offensively is the social media hitting coaches and the gurus that are out there. They're selling you something that they got this one thing that'll make you a great hitter. And I don't view it like that. Each player has their own tool set, their own strengths, their own weaknesses. And you have to work with that player in his realm of what he can do and what he can't do. I'm not a hitting guru. I don't have a magic pill to make you a great hitter. I don't have a magic pill to turn somebody into a 50 home run guy. I've never been a salesman like that. Hitting is too hard. I have too much respect for this league and the pitching with this swing in spring training. He started to struggle, then he started to feel it, then he had a hand injury, and then he wasn't able to get it right. But when they sent him down the last time, he got his head right. He was focused on the right things at the plate. The tool set is there. I do firmly believe that if he puts it all together, he could be one of the best offensive catchers in the league. Now, he was also asked about Juan Soto. And when he talked about Juan Soto's plate approach and skill set, he was asked about, anything that he did in connection to him. And when he said that, he said, I think there were times where I talked to Carlos about it. If we could get him to swing 0-0 or some pitches he can do damage on early in the count. But Juan is a precision hitter. I wouldn't get him out of his comfort zone at all. The only thing I would say, if you want to think outside the box and get creative, Juan is good at getting on base and he's selective. That there are a few times when things are going and you're in the middle of the lineup, your third, your fifth, your fourth, your fifth, like Pete Alonso. We all know Pete is going to chase. Pete's going to do damage, to where you're reflecting that Juan can drive in 140. But instead of doing that, you're telling him to get out of his comfort zone, just end up sliding him into the leadoff spot. You can be just as dynamic in the leadoff spot if you look at Shohei and what he's done without changing the player too much. Just change where he hits in the batting lineup. Whereas where a player hits does matter sometimes. There's an emotional tie to where you are out in the lineup, and not everybody can hit 3, 4, or 5 in the lineup. There was an article that came out after this whole quote came out, because obviously Juan Soto, one of the high-profile guys in the game, there was a article that came out from John Flanagan from SNY saying that Eric Chavez suggested Juan Soto be more aggressive at the plate during the Slugger's first season with the Mets. There was also another headline that said he tried to change his approach as well. And of course, when this came out, we know that Eric Chavez has to go out and defend himself as well. So he said on his Instagram story, something that he loves to use, saying that John Flanagan from SNY needs to be fired. If he needs a quote from me, ask me. I'm always honest with the media. I don't know him. Never asked me about Juan. SNY needs to do better at who they hire. Fake news with an exclamation point. So basically, from what we just heard, from all of those quotes, from every single aspect, Eric Chavez has learned nothing. He hasn't changed at all. He never will change. And to be honest, I don't give a shit if he changes, because he's not employed by my baseball team anymore. But one thing I have to say here, and I'm going to flip it over to Frank first, because obviously you're the Francisco Alvarez guy. We've talked about this before. But the Mets let go of quite a bit of coaches this week. They let go of Jeremy Barnes. They let go of Jeremy Barnes. They let go of Jeremy Hefner. They let go of Mike Sarbaugh. They let go of quite a bit on their staff. Did you see any of them going on podcasts and basically pleading their case to fans or pleading their case to baseball fans? Did you see any of them doing that? Any of them saying anything vocal at all? Because I didn't see it at all.
I didn't see it either, but it's the same thing, though, is that I never seen another coach, especially a hitting coach, pitching coach, who goes on social media with burner accounts and is, trolling fans and talking to fans and posting donuts and all kinds of crazy things. So I'm, like you said, I'm not the least bit surprised that he went to this route, whether it was talking about the SNY writer, whether it was going on a Foul Territory podcast. I'm the least bit surprised. I also kind of expected it with the kind of behavior that we've seen from him, not only while he has been employed by New York Mets, but as you mentioned multiple times, Carson, is in his playing days, he had a big mouth too. I mean, this is a guy that he never could shut up. So whether it's as a player, as a coach, as an unemployed bum, he's always got something to say. So it's not the least bit surprising, but to me, the Alvarez stuff, it's like time will tell. Okay. Like his one thing is true. Alvarez needs to get healthy. I mean, that no matter who his hitting coach is, we need to see Alvarez be fully healthy to fully evaluate where he's at as a player. Is he consistent? Can he develop? What can he be? That's one thing. Another hitting coach, could that make some changes? Perhaps. But I'm more caught up on the Juan Soto thing. That's where most of my anger is, because I have some statistics that prove that this fool is just so wrong with what he is saying about how to fix or how to get the most out of Juan Soto, that it's just absolutely crazy to me. And it would be kind of crazy for the Mets to do themselves. And that is this whole talk of, oh, well, maybe you should bat him leadoff because he's this great on-base percentage guy. Have we not talked about enough that this is a team full of leadoff hitters? Was it not the talk that we talked about on this very podcast during the middle of the season? Oh, you know what? We can't move Lindor at the leadoff spot to get Brandon Nimmo going. Lindor is not allowed to move off of leadoff. So we had that whole discussion. But when the Mets signed Juan Soto to this record-setting $800 million deal, do you know how many games Juan Soto has batted first in his career? Twice. It has been 2 times in his career, and both times it didn't go well. And he's saying, oh, a guy can't bat, 3, 4, 5, things like that. But guess what? He's batted third in his career 1,645 times, batted fourth 702 times, and batted fifth 306 times. So what in the world is he talking about? Juan Soto became this generational player, this generational talent that the Mets signed, not for his prowess as a leadoff hitter, as a middle of the order guy. So I don't know where he's getting this whole idea of, oh, the solution was, to move Soto to leadoff. That's not it. How about do your job? How about that? I mean, it was just so, that's not what's going to solve it. I just don't understand how, we talked about this too, but was Chavez the guy telling Mendoza change the lineup every day? Because outside of Juan Soto, this whole team had an issue with lineup consistency. Somebody was batting cleanup different every single day. Somebody's batting fifth different every day. You had, one guy batting ninth, then he's batting seventh, then he's batting sixth. I mean, it was so rare that they would have the same lineup even 2 days in a row, let alone 3. I mean, that was just about a miracle if something like that can happen. So you already have enough guys in the lineup moving far too often. Why would we move Soto to 1 anyway? And they moved him around a little bit. He spent some time at 2. He spent some time at 3. But I just don't understand why he's saying that, it's not me. It's where he's batting in the lineup. What are we talking about here? It's like you don't see that Juan Soto's had success everywhere he had been, 2, 3, 4, whatever, without you. And then, this first half was brutal. He turned it around, and it wasn't batting leadoff. So, this whole idea is, I told him to be more aggressive. I'm just not buying it. I just don't get it at all. I just feel like you said he's trying anything he can to make himself sound better, to feel like he's this, good coach that got a raw deal and unfairly got fired. But it was so interesting. You mentioned the point of like the whole title of that like little graphic was, do you shut up? Do you remember the article that came out in the middle of the season when Lindor was like, listen, we need you to be more vocal. We need to hear from you. So you don't want to talk to the players when it is your job, but you want to go on podcasts and not shut up. I mean, Make it make sense. When you were paid to talk, you wouldn't talk. But then when we don't want you to say anything, you can't shut up. I mean, you just can't make up this guy. He is like the opposite of the gift that keeps on giving. He's just a headache. Like, I'm glad he's not here anymore. But the fact that we're still talking about him being a whiny little baby, like I was already done with him, but he just continues to aggravate me over and over.
I mean, this is kind of the feel that I've gotten from this guy for like 4 years. And, there's points of success where nobody wants to hear it, but this is basically what Chavez is. I mean, that's basically all that we do. I mean, this is all he's done. That this is always the guy that he has been. He is always the guy that is, seen as the smartest guy in the room. He's always someone who, is going to antagonize the biting the hand that feeds you, because, the fans are the fans for a reason, and that they're a main reason as to why you get paid as well. It's not just the players as well. I mean, anybody learning a lesson and rallying around coaches and rallying around players and going after the fans and, things like that from 2021, I guess we didn't learn the lesson or whatever. But again, when it came to, Eric Chavez and everything, it's just the fact of, we've talked about co-hitting coaches where we don't understand the real concept of it. And again, I didn't really, the concept was never really bad, like completely awful to me, as long as the guys are on the same page. But from what Eric Chavez just said, and I don't know if he was just trying to shift it to Jeremy Barnes, who's not as vocal, he basically just said, well, we were just two completely different people. Yeah, and I could tell, because the offense looks so different in 2023 under Jeremy Barnes compared to with you in 2022. And results or not, I kind of liked their process better in 2023. Even though those results were not fantastic, there was a little bit more of an emphasis for power and damage and not slapping the ball around the field. But again, neither here nor there, because that's years ago now. Andrew, I'll move it over to you. Here's the thing about this. Obviously, it's a moot point at this point, but when you're talking about Juan Soto, your $800 million investment, talking about the co-hitting coaches concept, if he didn't like it so much, you could have just resigned, right? Because from what I heard from that, as simple as ever, because as Eric Chavez liked to say, keeping it simple always wins. So let me say it as simple as I can. Here's what I heard from you, Mr. Chavez. Well, I didn't like what was going on here, but the check was fat. The check was fat.
I mean, again, Steve loves giving out, got that Steve Cohen money. He probably, making $4 or $5 million. Just, I'm this great hitting coach. But remember, guys, this was supposed to be a top managerial. We were terrified. What was it? Epler was terrified that Eric Chavez was going to leave for manager. So he's telling you, hey, I would have put Lindor in a leadoff spot. Hey, Angels, you want to hire me as your manager? I didn't do anything. But, we're just talking about the foul territory. After he was fired, he was on MLB Network, too, on, MLB Now and MLB Tonight. I was, flipping to MLB Network the other day, and I'm like, he was on MLB Now talking to Brian Kenny, and then he was on MLB Tonight. I'm like, you just got fired 20 minutes ago, and now you're on 4 different podcasts ranting. Again, the fact that he's gone, whatever. The double hitting coaches is, if it's done symbiotically, it will work. And we'll talk about it obviously coming up, because it seems that they're going to at least keep partial, at least now, developing the hitters, and maybe, cohesion, as I'm probably in that spot. But am I still good?
You're okay. You're audible enough. I think you're good.
Yes.
I think you're good. Yeah.
Okay. No. All right, cool. But again, it's like that's the problem. Is like, okay, they want to move this double hitting coaches, and the fact that he's just throwing, like you said, he can throw all the blame on Barnes because is Jeremy Barnes ever going to speak? Have we ever even heard that man? I don't even know what it looks like, to be honest.
No.
So the fact that he can just throw all the shame on to Barnes probably will go into some Midwest team, never be heard of, never be seen again, and he will fight and take all the blame. And how much you want to bet someone will give Chavez another opportunity? And God, go to Philadelphia, go to Atlanta, stay in the division. Keep those great hitting strategic ways. Get into one of those organizations because you're such a guru of developing hitters. Like, and what's the problem we've had? We can't develop a young hitter to save our life. Besides, when's the last? I love Tony always says, "Who's the last homegrown Met that's been consistent?" It's been what, Alonso?
Yeah.
But you're supposed to be this great hitting guru. You get all these. You're supposed to mold these guys.
But he's not a hitting guru. He told you he's not a hitting
guru.
Oh,
that's true. He's not a hitting
I'm not
guru.
a hitting guru, but I'm right about everything. That's basically what he told you. Not to mention more contradiction, as Radiant says here in the chat, saying no one wants to point out the contradiction in the fact where he said that he wanted Soto to bat leadoff, but at the same time wanted the guy to be more aggressive. Which one is it? Like, and then he constantly says, he's like, oh, well, Barnes and I did a really great job. But sometimes we looked at each other and we were like, oh, what is this guy? Which one is it, Eric? Which one is it? You like to talk so much. Then why don't you actually give us a full on conclusion here? I mean, obviously we've talked about the Eric Chavez stuff with Francisco Alvarez before. Saying that I challenged him to be a more all-around hitter, which was kind of just a little bit small of a gist of what he said originally when we were talking about, with Eric Chavez at the beginning when that article originally came out. But there is, again, when it came to Francisco Alvarez, the main tool always has been his power. That has always been his main tool. That has been his best tool. It always has been. And the fact that he's sitting here and saying that I can't make a 50 home run guy, you probably have a potential 50 home run guy, or maybe you're just not really that good. Because when we talk about from a hitting coach standpoint, Frank, that hat that you're wearing,
there is a catcher that has over 50. Yeah.
Seattle, there's a catcher that has over 50 home runs in a non-hitter's ballpark, may I add as well, when they hired a coach from Atlanta who made a difference compared to what was going on with Seattle as well the years prior, where they couldn't figure out their offense whatsoever with all that offensive talent. So again, maybe you're just really not that good. And then he talks about, oh, well, when Alvarez came back, he was all great. Yeah, because he got away from you. That's why. I mean, come on. Like, are we not seeing how all of this stuff lines up? And this is stuff that I've been screaming at the top of my lungs for 4 years now. But it's like the way that it all connects. He's like, oh, well, me and Barnes are two completely different people. We can tell. He was great. Alvarez was great when he came back. Yeah, we can tell because he got away from you. Juan Soto, I tried to get him to be a little bit more aggressive and not be what Juan Soto is. Yeah, we could tell. Andrew?
Yeah, and like, even this just back to get to the Alvarez point. You have a 20-year-old catcher, which, again, is an anomaly. Like I said last week, the guy we talked about, the big dumper, when he was this age, when Alvarez, he was an A-ball. And the fact that you had a 20-year-old catcher hit 25 homers, and his main tool is hitting for power, you shouldn't be, well, I need you to hit for better. He's 21. Like, he gets his first year. You want to make adjustments? Fine. Everybody should look to make adjustments. Understand that. But don't be like, oh, you are a prolific power prospect. You come up and hit 25 homers. You know what we need to do? We need to scrap your swing. We need to take away the power. You need to go to the opposite field. At 20 years old, he couldn't even drink a beer and you're already telling this player who got to the big leagues based on power to say, you know what? You need to change who you are. I don't like who you are. You're a bum. You need to. The dude's a child.
And he also in that quote about, oh, well, you have to look at someone's strengths and weaknesses and look at player to player. You did the total opposite with Alvarez, though, because you did not go with his strength at all. So his actions don't even back up what he's saying. Like he's saying two different things basically in the same paragraph.
And what did it get you? What did it get you trying to change this whole thing with Alvarez? He's still, his pitch selection's not the best. Still.
And the other thing too is that if his excuse is saying, oh, well, it was a mental thing and he had to get his head right, that means that one of your jobs as a coach is to work on the mental game with your players so that they're not pressing, they're not stressed, they are focused and are being the best versions of themselves. But as a coach, you're not able to get through to your player. You're not able to get the best out of them. So they had to get it from the minor leagues. No matter how you slice it, it's a bad look for him.
Yeah, it is. And to be honest, when he's talking about a 50 home run guy, when he came back, if you talk about when Francisco Alvarez came back, what was it, beginning of September, after he was in AAA for a little bit, he hit 4 home runs to the end of the year. I'm not going to say that that's a full sustainable pace, but that's a 40 home run pace right there. That's a 40 home run pace from a catcher. So again, him doing that from that type of approach, because he got away from you. That's why.
And he had 2 broken hands.
He had 2 broken hands too. So maybe we can think about what he can do with actual functioning hands.
And an actual functioning hitting coach.
It's just, I can't sit here and listen to this bullshit because he's a bullshit artist. That's always what he has been. This is always what he has been. He has run his mouth. He can't back it up. I'm not sitting here and saying it's because of him, but like you just said, Frank, like we just pointed to, he's always done this. He always runs his mouth. This is all he does. And everyone that tells me, well, the hitting coach doesn't matter. The hitting coach doesn't matter. If you believe that, that's fine. But when you have a guy sending a message like this at a different level compared to the usual hitting coach, who talks like this? Who talks this much? What hitting coach talks this much? Who? Please, somebody tell me who talks this much. Have you guys ever heard the Yankees hitting coach talk this much? The Braves hitting coach talk this much? Maybe you have to scroll back into history on YouTube to see an interview with them. That's how rare they talk. This guy is yapping every fucking day. I can't sit here and just say, well, this is the guy, this is everybody says is the full-on scapegoat. No, he's not.
Because the other hitting coach got fired too, though. So it's not like it was just him. Like, if the Mets only fired Eric Chavez and nobody else, then okay, you can make that case. But everybody went. Like, hitting, pitching, like a whole bunch of different departments got a whole turnaround. So it's not just him. Like, this team failed. So stuff's going to have to change. And listen, if there's change to player personnel, we'll get into if there's a different first baseman, if there's a different second baseman, a different outfielder. Like, it wasn't just you, dude. Like, there was a lot of things that had to change with this organization. You were just part of it. Like, the reason why the Mets missed the postseason, and it's so obvious, it was not one issue. Like, there was multiple issues with this team. So they've got to address multiple things. They're going to make multiple moves in different areas of the team. Like I said, whether it's management, whether it is players, like, they're going to change a lot, and they need to change a lot. So, I mean, this whole like, oh, woe is me, oh, poor me, like you said, BS.
And that's the funny part about it. He literally said in some of those quotes, like I just read to you, I'm not a salesman. What are you doing right now? You're trying to sell your work. That's what you just did. You idiot. Like, what are you serious? Come on. Like, this is like first grade stuff, first grade types of stuff of making connections here. This is ridiculous. Unbelievable. Anyways, Someone asked in the chat here, this is Mets 2128 in the chat saying, how do we call in? And we have something that we are proud to announce is that we actually reopened our 24/7 hotline for our show. It's got a new number now because we had to change it and we had to
New
move
number,
things
who
around.
dis?
But yeah, anyways, Jesus Christ. For any of your questions or your comments, if you want to call into the show, call 609-521-8560 and send us a voicemail under 90 seconds long. Please refrain from using offensive and or derogatory language. All calls will be pre-screened for obvious reasons, and numbers will be blocked if you violate any of these rules. It is a one-strike policy. Send us a voicemail at any time, 24/7. It is open. 609-521-8560. That is 609-521-8560 for the chance to be a part of our show. So, anyways, back into the chat. I want to drop in here. We have a few that we have starred. Stem asking, why was Mendy not fired? We already got into Carlos Mendoza. But again, when you look at these coaches and everybody's saying that it's, a scapegoat type of thing, that, his coaches are being, these coaches are being fired and it has absolutely, protecting Mendy's job. Mendy inherited these coaches. Mendy was, he was the guy who was given these coaches who've been here for many years. They needed to clean this out 2 years ago, and we talked about that. But for some reason, they wanted to throw along and inherit everything because the Mets like to do things ass backwards. Now we're finally getting what we want 2 years later. But again, Mendoza, we've already talked about it on here. Next year is the last year on his contract. So that's going to be the deciding year for him. Obviously, he didn't have a good year whatsoever, but I did not expect them to let him go. I really didn't. I don't know, Frank, if that was what you had feeling, because we talked about this already. I don't know if you were here for it, but again, I didn't see it happening. I didn't see them letting go of Mendoza. It just was not going to happen. So again, whether people are happy with that or not, I don't know how many managers you can throw under the bus with this, group of players. Like we've talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely was a lot of things to be concerned about. I mean, Damian brings up a good one. The 0 for 70 after trailing 8 innings. Like, the team had no fight. Like, they just, they laid down. Even the last game of the season, like, the season's on the line, 0 runs. Like, you just don't show up. You just absolutely check out. Like, they never showed me at any point this season that they truly cared, that like they really wanted to make the playoffs. I never saw it. I mean, it was just far too often. I mean, we talked about this literally all season long. The lackadaisical, focus. The mental mistakes all over the place, in the field, on the bases, pitching, hitting, anywhere that you could have like a lapse, they did. And it was by their leaders, their veteran players. And there was so many different guys who just had no idea what was going on. And they were just, was pressing, stressing, whatever you want to call it. Like, they just never seemed like they had it together. There was just the guys not hustling even. Like, there was just a lot of things that are bad reflections on the manager. Like, your team looks unprepared. Your team looks unfocused. Your team looks like they don't care. Like, those are all bad things as a manager. It's just a really poor look. So, what he's doing behind the scenes, only very few could speak on it. He must be doing something really good, because from what we can see on the television screen, and if you want to talk about some of the managing decisions, who is in charge of the lineup on a day-to-day basis, is it Mendoza? Is it Stearns? Is it somebody else? Is it a combination of people? Is it a computer? Who knows? It could be ChatGPT making the lineups at this rate, because that's how it felt, how inconsistent they were. So that's one thing. The bullpen managing, not great. And all my Franklies, I talked about it. Pinch hitting mistakes, pinch running mistakes, just overall choices, when to bunt, when not to bunt, when to steal, when not to steal. Like there was a ton of different managerial things that were also very poor. Sticking with Clay Holmes after the fifth inning far too often, after how many times you saw it didn't work out, you kept doing the same thing. You're not adjusting. Like there was a lot of things that you could point to that say, hey, man, that's not really a great manager. And if you want to go further, how about this team 2 years ago before they went on the magical Grimace Jose Iglesias run, one of the worst teams in baseball? Like you don't have this long proven track record of success. You're not a manager who's been here a long time and you won a championship and you've won a bunch of games consistently. You're always in the playoffs and like, oh, you had a bad year. It's okay. No worries. No, like you don't have like much to back you up, where so far we've seen you 2 years and we haven't seen anything all that incredible, all that like, oh my gosh, we need to keep this manager. I haven't seen any of that. I really have not, because again, to me, the savior looks a lot more like Jose Iglesias, JD Martinez, and Grimace than it does Carlos Mendoza. That's just from the outside looking in. That's just what I see. And listen, we'll see if this year the other coaches that they get, the new bench coach, like we talked about new hitting coach, maybe new pitching coach, are they going to get other veteran leaders? Marte's out the door. We know everyone loved him. Are they really going to go down the tubes now because they lost their other veteran leader? Are they going to get true leadership on this team that's going to be more vocal? Because it doesn't look like it's Mendoza. Because, I mean, we talk about all the inexcusable mistakes, the ejections. I mean, there's just so much from this team. Never bench a guy. Never like, oh, you make a bunch of errors. You're not focused. You're not hustling. I mean, you see other managers, and you mentioned Atlanta, for example, like those managers, they'll pull a guy when you're not hustling. I mean, Mendoza never. If you don't slide, you're not busting it down the line. Oh, well, okay, no problem. You go back out there tomorrow. And today, like, no issue. Like, I just, where is it? I just don't see like that strong leadership. I don't see a vocal leader at all. And it's not from the players. So what else can I go by? Well, we keep talking about, what went wrong this season? Because you can't say, oh, this team wasn't as talented as the year before. That's false. The team had more talent and they came up short. So we got to figure out something. And we started with these coaches. If we don't see improvement, you most certainly are next. And if you have a season, the first half, like you did 2 years ago, you're gone before the season's over, in my opinion.
No, yeah.
We can't be playing around no more. We really can't.
There was an article that did drop. It was like a week ago saying, Mendoza could be, next. And obviously Steve Cohen is he's starting to, the frustrations are starting to come up to the top with the lack of consistency of what he has had so far for these first 5 years as owning the team. And when you talk about, things like, holding the manager accountable or holding the coaches accountable or what hasn't changed, what has been the same, I think that we've constantly brought into this pattern of where a manager's here for 2 years and we toss him out. I feel like there's been so many times where we have the same players. How many managers are you going to go through? And I'm not going to sit here and say that Carlos Mendoza had a fantastic year and he pushed all the right buttons, because he didn't. He did not at all. And we just did not have any of that feel. We also felt like, there wasn't a leader in the clubhouse at all this year. And compared to when we talked about it with Jose Iglesias, like we said, when all of that changed from them having being one of the worst teams in baseball for the first 2 months last season in 2024, it's just, I don't know what else everyone wants to do. They really just want a scapegoat, and they want a guy to be the poster for all the team's failures when there's so many different components as to why. And I think that this team in general was poorly coached. I think we've talked about this team being poorly coached for so long. But there's also some stuff about Carlos Mendoza that was not fantastic. And there was, I don't want to say there was stubbornness, but I feel like there was a lack of a lack of urgency to control. And that's where I kind of saw it here when we saw things, like the Jose Siri, when he was screwing up plays, the base running mistakes, the costly errors, which we had so many different costly miscues throughout the entire season. And I feel like they're just, I don't know if he felt that you just didn't have as many options to put in and the team wasn't as deep. And that goes more into the roster construction with David Stearns. But like guys getting benched, guys not playing, different things like I've never been one to really, again, I'm not going to be one to just completely go after Mendoza because I feel like I'm one that probably defends him the most because I just feel like the same group of players that have been here for so long, they should know what they're doing. The veterans should know what they're doing. And we're constantly seeing this underperforming, lack of effort, inconsistency. It goes beyond the manager's head at some point. I feel like at some point, these guys have been here. They should know what they're doing. They should at least somehow. I don't know how many managers you can just toss down the drain until you realize it's like something else is going to have to give.
They should, no doubt about it. Like you said, they are veteran players, but you don't become dumb overnight. Like, I mean, the stuff we saw from Lindor, from Nimmo, from other guys, like that doesn't just magically happen. You don't just all of a sudden become a dumb baseball player that makes a bunch of mistakes. Like there has to be some kind of, again, if there's just no accountability, if guys just aren't focused, they're not locked in. I mean, what else could it be? Because like Nimmo, Lindor,
there could be an element of complacency.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of complacency. They're not low IQ players overall because we've seen them as Mets make plenty of heads up plays, smart plays, not make a bunch of mental mistakes, like less than rookie mistakes. I'm talking about like little league mistakes that we've seen from this team this year. Yeah. That doesn't just all of a sudden happen overnight. So there has to be something else going on that these guys, again, like whether it was the focus or just the overall effort and energy, it just wasn't there. I mean, there was far too many times they just fell flat. It was just a team that like they never could build on anything here. That was the thing that was frustrating too, is that you're like, oh, maybe we're going to turn around. We had a good game. Oh, we had a good series. Well, we're done for a week. I mean, how many times we talk about it? 15 runs one day, 2 the next. 7 runs, 1 inning, no runs rest of the game. Like they said, the complacency, there was never the like, okay, let's build on, let's keep it rolling. It was just, oh, okay, we're done now.
I think it's also the fact of, you know, how the Mets manage assets too. And this is a whole other discussion here, but we see them hold on to guys for a long time and try to squeeze out the most value they could possibly get. They did it with Starling Marte. I mean, there probably was a point where they probably should have just eaten his money and brought in some kind of a young guy or brought somebody else in, but they didn't end up doing that. They have kept guys along for a long time. We saw, you know, Dom Smith get held on for a long time and JD Davis get held on for a long time. And it's not like you can keep, you know, recycling players in and out and things like that. But I'm just saying it's more of just the thought. I don't know if it's just an organizational thing as to where they're like so complacent. It's like, well, I make a mistake, I'm not going anywhere. I have another year on my contract. I have another year on this. I have another year on like, there has to be some accountability here. And I feel like they wait too long for it. Like we just said, those coaches that should have been let go 2 years ago, that slate of coaches should have been gone 2 years ago. It's just it's the fact that I feel like it just, you have a lot of ass backwards type of mentality, or the timing of it or the consistency of it. It's just not there. And that's just not how you build a winning baseball team. It's not. And I don't know if it has anything to do with Mendoza. I don't know if it has anything to do with the coaches. Hopefully it is, because it looks like they're the first to go. And it seems like they're seen as the first change that they're going to end up making, which was needed, like we said, 2 years ago, because this team has been poorly coached and not fundamentally sound no matter what. But then there's going to be some questions about Mendoza. And when Mendoza, let's say if they get off to a rough start next season, and that's next season, we're not even close, you know, still the postseason here. But if they do get off to a slow start, he probably will get let go. But guess what's going to happen afterwards? Everyone's beloved players, if they start to underperform in that way too, if they don't have a turnaround from Joe Girardi to Rob Thompson like the Phillies did a few years ago, if they don't have that, then some of everyone's beloved players are going to end up going, no matter if they're good or not, if they have good stat lines or not. Someone's going to have to be held accountable. Someone. Because you can't spend top dollar, top 1% money in this league to make the playoffs every other year. That can't happen. It just cannot happen. You should be perennial playoff team. It shouldn't be every year. Oh, we don't know. We don't know. We have no idea. Shouldn't be like that. And I know a lot of people will sit here and make excuses saying, oh, well, this team. You've had the top payroll in baseball for 4 years now. There should be an expectation here. And there should be more deeper conversations than just, well, who's going to be on my fantasy team next year? How am I going to build this team? The message being sent, the whole mentality needs to be better. There needs to be better expectation. Just because this team hasn't won anything recently doesn't mean they shouldn't have the goal for it. I don't want to sit here and be, well, I'm okay with this mediocrity. I'm all right with it. I'm okay. We had a good solid. The goal should be to win the whole goddamn thing. That's what the goal should be. And also not end on these horrific collapses. And that's why I'm so proud about that 2024 team, because there was no heartbreaking collapse. There was no heartbreaking end. That team gave you everything. Their all to the end. There was nothing heartbreaking about it. There was no doodah throw to home. There was no Jerry's Familia screw up. There was no 2007 collapse. There was nothing. And then they followed up in 2025 with possibly one of the most historic collapses ever. So at some point, we're going to have to ask some really tough questions. And one of those tough questions, one of those tough topics, we're going to get into today. But before, let's look into the new, the lookup, everything that's great in life right now. And that being the new voice that the Mets just hired for the hitting department, which is going to be pretty much their last hurrah for these guys to kick it into gear and not completely waste the full potential of this offense. Let's talk about Jeff Albert, who they just hired to be leading their hitting program for the major leagues for the 2026 season. Jeff Passan tweeted it out that Jeff Albert will be in charge of the Mets hitting program in 2026. He will be in uniform and help fill the void left, even though it's not really a void. It's more of just addition by subtraction, like we just said, for the firings of hitting coaches Jeremy Barnes and Eric Chavez. Albert, 44, served as a hitting coach for the St. Louis Cardinals and joined the Mets in 2022. New York's farm system is teeming with good young bats, and the plan is to have Albert run hitting at the major league level and complement him with another hitting coach. As for the resume with Jeff Albert, for those of you who don't know, 2003, graduated from the University of Butler. 2008, he has a master's degree in kinesiology. I believe I said that correctly, from Louisiana Tech, which is a study of exercise science, from what I've looked up. From 2009 to 2013, he was the minor league hitting coach in the Cardinals system. He ended up going to the Astros for a few years, being their minor league hitting coordinator in the Astros system in the minor leagues. In 2018, he was the Astros assistant hitting coach. He went back to the Cardinals to be their hitting coach from 2019 to 2022, where he was the head guy. And from 2023 to 2025, he has been the director of hitting development in the Mets system, where he's worked with a lot of the young guys, some guys that he has definitely worked with being success stories. So far in the Mets farm system, Jet Williams, AJ Ewing, all having breakout years. He worked with Ryan Clifford as well. So again, you look at some of the hitting ranks that the St. Louis Cardinals had in 2019 to 2022, maybe a little bit of a mixed bag from a few different perspectives, but there also is a point of emphasis where the star power is obviously higher at the major league level for this team compared to that Cardinals team. But, obviously lifting the ball well, not hitting the ball on the ground, lots of pulled batted ball events. Let's just say that. You have some EVs up in the top 10s as well, getting on base a lot. So the pitch selection was decent. you're the top 10 in weighted runs created plus, and this is for a spread of 3 years. So that's a big, that is a big sample size, obviously. Now, here's the one thing that I would want to say before we even get into Jeff Albert here. I know that people were freaking out seeing that, well, it looks like they're going to go with co-hitting coaches again. It looks like from what we were hearing from Jeff Passan that was the case. Then we heard from Anthony DiComo, the main Mets beat writer at MLB.com. He said that he is going to the other hitting coach is going to report to Albert. So it looks like it's more of an assistant thing, I'm going to guess, but it looks like it's going to be a hire that, I don't know, Albert maybe makes himself and likes and will be on the same page, unlike Chavez and, Barnes, who it seemed like there were two completely different guys. I don't know who ended up hiring those two idiots. But anyways, Andrew, I'm going to swing this over to you. You obviously are well familiar with the Cardinals. Obviously, you are in the the Midwest area, and you do focus a little bit on the Cardinals on what has been seen there. I mean, Jeff Albert, I know there's some things that I've heard that are a little bit spotty, but I do know that the process that he does preach, or that type of message that he gives out, is a very, very modern approach as compared to what we were hearing from 2000s Mr. Pancakes over here in Eric Chavez. So, Andrew, what do you know anything regarding Jeff Albert with him that you could maybe say? I mean, again, we don't know how this is going to work out. This is obviously more star power with the Mets compared to what they had with St. Louis, but he was there for quite a few years. So I don't know. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, when he was the real hitting coach for the big league team, when he got fired, a lot of people down here were very excited because that was the back half of the Arenado Goldschmidt kind of run, where that, when he was in the minor leagues, when you saw those guys, when they were consistently still making the playoffs and their player development was top tier, was kind of a model organization, he's a big part of that. Ever since he's left, the Cardinals' offensive prospect development has been horrific. I mean, Jordan Walker is the prime example. This is a guy who max EVs, has a massive ground ball pump. There's plenty of raw tools to take. They can't figure it out. Mason Wynn, obviously, Nolan Gorman, these guys that they've had post Alberts, who are big prospects and all that, haven't really hit that development in the big leagues, or they've kind of stunted their growth. So there is some good things to see, because obviously when he was there, he started developing that core that obviously won the World Series and got to the World Series in 2013. Some of the young players that were on that team he helped develop. So there are some good things. Again, when he was on the big league team, again, veteran team, there was some, headbutting with some of those veteran players with him, because he is so analytically driven, and the old school guys did not take well to that. So that was maybe, not a great thing. And obviously the Cardinal way, there's a big tradition and old school vibe here compared to, they're just starting with, obviously not bringing in Heim Bloom. Now they're going to start adapting to actually analytics when, obviously they are we do it by the book. We have our way. We don't really care about, what the way of baseball is. And that kind of did not go well in the clubhouse with some guys. Some guys, well, the younger guys were sure because they worked with him, but obviously some of the vets, there was some kind of headbutting. So, and we've seen with the Mets prospects, he's done really well in developing since he's gotten here. So I think this is a fine. Again, we talked about this last week. Everyone was clamoring for the big name, superstar, former major league big leaguer. That's an MVP caliber player. And we told you it wasn't going to be anybody. They stayed in house, which could be a good thing because, again, he's obviously developed Jet and Ewing and the Benjes and that's could be a good thing for the next tour.
Yeah.
Because I think this will shift to the next topic we talk about later, that the Mets are in a pinpoint where it's time to move on from a certain core, and that next core is going to be the next foundation. At least he has been molding that next foundation. So at least you do have that benefit of this is a guy who's worked with those guys, and if they are going to be the future, there is some familiarity, which is good to bring the youth, bringing rookies up. There is some comfortability in the hitting coach in the major league. So again, it's a fine hire. Again, some people are obviously upset. Of course, there's who is this nerd? But I think it's a fine hire, like we talked about last week. Name the like I said last week. Name the 4 hitting coaches on the 4 playoff teams right now. You don't know who they are. As long as the process is fine, it seems like again from everything we've seen, the data we've seen, the process looks to be good. You give them more high end talent. Who knows? Maybe this works.
Yeah. Now, Frank, I'll shift it over to you. When we've talked about it from the spotlight of Francisco Alvarez and what Eric Chavez was trying to drill into his brain with a chainsaw, when you talk about it from another standpoint of maximizing his power and maximizing the raw hitting tools, he is obviously power first prospect. That was one of the main reasons as to why he was the number 1 prospect in all of baseball at one point. If I were to tell you that the entire time that Jeff Albert was the head hitting coach for the St. Louis Cardinals, that the St. Louis Cardinals were first in pulled fly ball rate, what would that make you feel about with Francisco Alvarez going forward? Would that make you think that maybe Brett Beatty could hit 40 home runs?
I mean, one could hope, but I think that's really going to be the big key because to me, like Andrew said, and we're talking about like high level talent. So we're talking about Francisco Lindor, you're talking about Juan Soto, and potentially Pete Alonso. We'll see, but you're talking about guys with, I mean, very proven track records. You know, a couple of these guys are MVP caliber players. They've had multiple teams, multiple hitting coaches, and despite all those changes, always find a way to have success one way or the other by the time the season's over. Whether some years might have the higher average, some years maybe more home runs, but overall, they still put together a really solid season. So for me, when I'm bringing a hitting coach, I'm like, okay, well, don't mess up what they're doing. Like, you don't have to do too much work, but the young players is really where they've got to focus because we know what those 3 guys are going to do if you keep Pete. But the other ones, Alvarez, Vientos, Beatty, maybe Mauricio, if Jet actually is in the mix, if Clifford's in the mix, you know, some of these other guys, like that's where the key is. If the Mets could get them to be what they're capable of, can maximize their potential that made them high-level prospects, whether it was international or in the draft, that is where this team could go to a new level offensively, is that if you have these young guys supporting the stars, you have a very deep lineup that, if again, has a lot of power on paper. These guys individually can get high max exit velocities. Do they do it consistently? No. But if you have someone who is actually telling them to pull and get these high exit velos, maybe you do see more consistency. But the main key, like we said, is that, okay, well, if he is going to bring in another person who is the actual hitting coach, well, they really do need to be on the same page, because if we have that going again, 2 different voices, you do this, I do that, the guys are going to get confused again, and we're literally going to be in a very similar situation. So it's going to be interesting, but you feel like there is going to be a bit of an adjustment period because if we're talking about a guy who is into analytics, you look at what this Mets team did last year, and Carson talked about it, but the analytics show this team was not trying to pull fly balls. They were waiting. Oh. They're swinging late. They're looking at the opposite field. There could be a growth period here. Like there could be some growing pains of, okay, well now we have to change our habits. We have to change our philosophy as a team for the players. Like we were used to doing one thing. Now we got to get back to doing something else. So maybe to start off, it might not look all that pretty. And there might be some inconsistencies as they're trying to get used to it, because it is, if this is what we're talking about, very different than what they were doing. And to me, I feel like that's a good thing. We talk about it that, like, you know what, power hitting goes a long way. Watch the playoffs. Like, when you're facing elite pitching on a daily basis, you got to capitalize on mistakes. You can't singles your way in. You can't walks your way in. It's got to be the homer. You've got to hit for a lot of power. And this team right here, Seattle, they do a whole lot of that. You know, the Dodgers, obviously. Tampa Bay, I'm not Tampa Bay, Toronto. Like, you see a lot of teams that they have a bunch of home run power, and that's where they capitalize. So you've got to appreciate your team, especially if you have guys that already have power. You've got to go after those pitches that you could do damage with. Don't take strike 3 looking. You know what I mean? Like, if you see a pitch to hit, you got to crush it. So, like, it's going to be a lot of changes. We'll see. And time will tell. You know what I mean? If you see guys still struggling with men on, still taking strike 3 looking down the middle, and you see guys chasing when a guy can't find the strike zone. I mean, there's like so many different things that we talk about. I mean, they take the good pitches, swing at the bad pitches. I mean, like the approach, it just seems, like we said, very inconsistent and wrong. So there was just so much that went wrong for this team offensively that they needed a big change. So we'll see. I mean, again, I hope the hitting coach that they do bring in gets along with Albert really well. They're on the same page and they can get the most out of these guys because, like Andrew said, I mean, depending on how it goes, they could have a pretty different team. Like you can have a good amount of decent players. It could be a lot of young players because you do have so much money committed to these certain stars in Lindor and Soto and, Nimmo to a certain extent. You're going to see some new faces. You're going to see some young guys. So, and some more players who are accustomed to analytic approaches because, slowly but surely, if your veterans are leaving, you're not really going to have too many like anti-analytical players. So we'll see. But I mean, I definitely like that. It's totally different philosophy than Chavez. Again, they needed that. But as always, time will tell.
I mean, there is some example that I do want to point out here of kind of maximizing either your stars or maximizing certain type of players. But we saw 2022, which was the last year that Jeff Albert was there. That was the best. That was possibly the best offensive all-around season from Nolan Arenado as well. You also had Paul Goldschmidt's National League MVP win under Jeff Albert as well in there. And again, Nolan Arenado was a player that it seemed like everyone was looking at his offensive numbers and saying, well, he plays at Coors. He plays 81 games at Coors, and that could inflate his numbers. Well, under Jeff Albert, it seems like the best years that he's had in St. Louis without Coors were under Jeff Albert. So again, the timeline does line up there, and I'm not going to say and sit here and say, well, Nolan Arenado had great years under Jeff Albert. That means that Brett Beatty is, because they're both third basemen. That's not what I'm trying to say here, but I'm just saying it's that there is a track record here of him relaying information or actual information that exists, as opposed to Eric Chavez, who, when it came to a lot of approaches at the plate, like we said, and Frank, I don't know if we've gotten into this specifically, but we've talked about it before. They look either so unprepared or they look like they don't even have any information at all. And it's not like this hasn't been fully public, because we all know that Eric Chavez loved to run his mouth the way that he did. He said, well, we want them up there with the least amount of information as possible. Like, that was the first quote that he said in spring training in 2022. And then I'm like, okay, this is a terrible hire. And it's going to be catastrophic. But again, that's water under the bridge now. If there is information that should be relayed when you have this sort of technology now, it should be like that. It shouldn't be a complete overflow. It should be, hey, can I get this information? Okay, here's said information. That would be nice, where you can finally find a flow of consistency. And I'm not someone who's going to sit here and tell you every hitter needs to be pull fly ball, always be a power hitter, because not every hitter is like that. What my main thing is maximizing damage. If a pitch is pullable, freaking pull it, because you never know how many chances you're going to get with how good pitching is these days. It's not like the 90s. It's not like the 2000s where we're like, oh, well, this guy has a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. Got to look out for that. It's a lot different now. A lot different of a game now. And I'm not saying that they need to just shove analytics down their throat and shove advanced data down their throat, because, again, these are professional hitters and this is their job. They're not just going to sit here and have somebody just tell them what to do constantly. It's about the message that's being sent. And there should be accountability as well, like we said, with the accountability. And that's going to be one of the main tests when it comes to guys like Carlos Mendoza, when it comes to these coaches as well, because we didn't have that over this last time when we talked about this accountability. And that's, again, the message being sent. Well, you stared at 3 strikes. That's fine. You'll be back in the lineup tomorrow. I need to see something different other than that, because that's not going to help the situation at all. So again, we'll see what happens on that side of things, obviously. Again, I don't know what their plan is going to be for that second hitting coach. I'm not sure, or that second guy who's going to be the guy that, relays things to Jeff Albert. We'll see. For those of you who want it to be Manny Ramirez, it's not going to be Manny Ramirez. We already talked about it. It's legacy hires. It's not something that usually the big name. That's more of the desperate move that guys like in the football realm of Mark Davis, the owner of my favorite team in football. He goes after the big name and thinks that this is amazing. So no, obviously in that realm. But again, I know people have talked about Carlos Beltran, who is in the organization right now. If they stay internal and they have Beltran as that second guy there, I wouldn't be mad about it. Obviously,
Carlos is not really. He's not really an analytical guy, though. It doesn't sound like something that would be on the same page as what Albert talks about, because Carlos is actually.
He's more of a signs guy.
Vientos and Alvarez have both publicly said he's talked about going to the opposite field and going to right center, not trying to pull all the time.
It's more of the God-given power. I think that was the message. Again, it wasn't really just, it's like, oh, well, these coaches are making these players do that. Because I feel like that's the message that continues to be that type of thing. They're not making it. It's about the message that being sent. What was the message that was sent from Beltran to Vientos was, use your God-given power that you have. Like, that if you get a decent amount of a pitch, at some point in some kind of wheelhouse, that you're going to crush it with the God-given power that you have. And maybe that's something that doesn't sustain throughout in a ballpark like Citi Field, but it is good advice for a guy like Mark Vientos, who at some points will offer at pretty much anything. Like that's definitely some good advice. And he carried that over, and he was a big part of that team in 2024. So I don't know if Carlos Beltran would be a full translation to being a hitting coach because of that advice that he gave to Mark Vientos, just specifically for that. I think that more just shows how useless Eric Chavez was. That basically just shows to me how it was. But Andrew, now that you're back in your usual position here, or somewhat, we were talking about Nolan Arenado having one of his best offensive years under Jeff Albert. We were talking about Paul Goldschmidt's MVP year under Jeff Albert as well. They had some good years from Tyler O'Neill as well under him. There were some other hitters. You probably have a list here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Grichuk had some good years, obviously, before he got traded. You look at guys, Harrison Bader, and then obviously early on, you saw a little bit of more offensive production before he kind of became the defensive wizard that he is. Even a guy like Johnny Peralta had a really good year, and I think that maybe was slightly before. That might be like 2018 again. But I remember, don't quote me on Johnny Peralta. But again, the Cardinals have had those guys. But I mean, the Arenado and Goldschmidt thing is obviously the fun part to say. Obviously, those are two great hitters, and kind of like what Frank was talking about. That's those, the elite talent you shouldn't have been. And then, again, I've been, there was some rumors that, they those couple guys didn't really like him. But again, it's under, you could take it kind of like, hey, he was under my watch, but there was some things going on there. But again, he's definitely, the younger core, like those homegrown Cardinals, the O'Neills, the Randall Grichuks, those type of guys have had success. And again, like when I've said, I think I said it before, ever since he's left, the Cardinals' offensive value development, they can't develop a hitter to save their life. They're praying this J.J. Weatherall could save that. But ever since he has left, they've not been able to develop an offensive bat. So, again, the pull powers and him wanting to pull fly balls and what the hell's the word I'm looking for? The strategy or what's the word I'm looking for? Can't figure it out. But the way that he wants to play baseball, it's an interesting way for the Mets. And it's like an Alvarez Beatty. You made the joke 40 homer Beatty. I don't think that's going to happen. But can we maybe see a more consistent Brett Beatty?
That's again nice, maybe wouldn't it?
Again, maybe the consistency of some of the guys could be a benefit to say, hey, if this way of playing the game, maybe that works. But again, the Cardinals definitely have been hurting since he's left. But again, and we've seen the pipe up of Mets prospects and the ballooning and AJ. We talk about Benj and Jet, but again, AJ Ewing, Jacob Reimer becoming like some fringe top 100 prospect on some we've seen offensive prospects go up under his under his eyes. So again, it's a good thing, and obviously we're going to probably talk about a certain guy. If that guy were to leave, there are some guys being developed by Albers that have been developing and brewing under Albers that maybe is a long-term replacement. But again, we'll have that conversation in a second.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the main guy that I thought they would consider for it, but I think that this direction, again, it's more of just the overall message, like I said, and from what I'm seeing from like a lot of the data under him, it's more promising compared to the inconsistencies that we were seeing with all this offensive talent. And again, it's not just the coaches. We're not going to sit here and say this is the magic potion that is going to fix everything and make them into a World Series contender. We're not saying that, but again, the message, the mentality, like we said, there was not enough accountability. There really wasn't. And is Jeff Albert the guy that holds these guys accountable? I don't know. Does Carlos Mendoza finally, with his coaches or with guys that have been discussed with him, with that type of trust, does he finally willing to hold guys accountable or willing to show a little bit more of that now that he's a little bit more comfortable in the job? And this will be his third year managing. So we'll see how that works. But again, leadership is important. It has been noticed this year when they didn't have much of it, and it seemed like it was an every man for himself type of thing. And it was put on notice in 2024 when we saw what happened when Jose Iglesias got here and JD Martinez finally got into that full swing as well. And they took guys like Vientos under their wing, that type of message that needs to be sent from the leadership group. It's very, very important. Frank, if there's anything else you want to add before we get into one of the guys who is one of the faces that we will talk about in certain aspects.
Yes, I mean, I think too. Also, you have to look at the David Stearns aspect of it. That the still sticking internally is a choice to me, because it's like you inherited internal pieces, got rid of them later on, but you're now promoting another internal piece. So that's something that I do find kind of interesting. I feel like if this guy was as brilliant as they may think he is, shouldn't he have just been in this role to begin with? I just feel like that's like a question that I would have. But also is that I can't just say that, because they're supposed to pull fly balls and there's certain cases with St. Louis that this is going to work out, and like there's certain prospects. Like I could take all those things under consideration, but I do have to look at David Stern's track record of identifying personnel to have productive hitting. Different talent level, no doubt, but there still were plenty of offensive concerns for years regarding the Milwaukee Brewers that I still have to take that under consideration. So, what is David Stern's philosophy on hitting? Does it match with Albert? Does it match with the new hitting coach? And does it match with the players that David Stearns is going to bring in? What is a David Stearns player? Because from what we've seen, and you want to blame Eric Chavez, you want to blame Jeremy Barnes, but we have to mention it. The offseason, the deadline, horrible. I mean, not only the Pittsburgh, but the hitting was even worse. You had literally nobody. I mean, outside of Alonso, which was not a David Stearns move, he probably wouldn't have even signed him if it was his choice. That was a Steve Cohen thing. These guys were not good at all. Some of them were hurt, no doubt about it, Jesse Winker, but a lot of these guys, they couldn't get the job done. And what was more concerning to me, and this kind of goes to Jeff Albert in a certain sense, but there was nobody in the minor leagues that could fill in. There was nobody that was major league ready to step up. In the end of the season, I mean, Carson, the playoffs on the line, we're going back to Jared Young. I mean, come on now. Like, we have zero depth. We have nobody.
I think you're selling Jared Young too short here.
He did to himself. But it's just like, I mean, really, we can't develop anybody. We can't identify anybody, even on a minor league scale, who could be kind of productive for us in a small role. I mean, look at the mismanagement of Mauricio. He was on the bench for a month, and then he got some starts because they didn't want to use Vientos' glove. I mean, that's what we're wasting our bench on. Like, it's just we don't have any other hitters that we could go to. We were employing like Cedric Mullins and Jose Siri at the same time, or Tyrone Taylor, Jose Siri.
They traded a decent amount of them away too. Like,
we have Acuna who's running. I mean, we don't have no one that can hit. Like, there was just no hitters anywhere to be found within the organization. So to me, that's an indictment on Stearns that he did not identify major league ready talent that could help you when you needed it. And then also on the hitting development, you haven't developed guys who are ready to be major league contributors for you. So I once again, I can't say that, oh, well, you know what, the Mets have done a great job identifying hitting talent, and then you have guys who do well. And kind of, to be honest with you, on the flip side, how about the guys who are top 10 prospects who fall out of the top 10? What about Luis Angel Acuna? What about Drew Gilbert? I mean, you could give me examples. You could say Jet. Oh, well, here's a top prospect of baseball anyway. You give me AJ Ewing. But I could give you guys on the other side that's like, well, not really. They didn't develop. I mean, you could give me Clifford, but like it's not a guarantee with some of these guys.
Yeah, Gilbert. I think it's.
I know injuries are part of it, but I mean,
the more of it I'm seeing is that Albert was more of like, I don't know if it was lower levels or he was just like overseeing all of the minor league development. Then he had like people going to him or whatever. I don't know what his role was originally with this team. But I think it's just more of the guys that they were drafting, and that was more of the emphasis. I don't know, because Acuna and Gilbert were not Mets. Like
right, but they were guys who were in other organizations who had a certain prospect rankings, came to the Mets with said prospect rankings, and then while in this organization declined. So there was not improvement, and that's another way that you kind of can monitor coaching a little bit. How did one guy do with this coach, and how did he do without this coach? And we talked a lot about that on the pitching side. We see guys who were like bums for us, and then they go to another team and they're all of a sudden amazing now. We're like, how come they couldn't do that with us? Like, that does go to a development. That does go to a coaching aspect.
Yeah, of course. Again, it's not all completely perfect. I think that, you know, anybody that they had, you know, could have possibly helped us in the minor leagues. I don't think it really would have been any much of an upgrade or anything that was completely considered to the point that it would have just, completely helped us elevate and give us a jolt or whatever. I feel like they had what they had locked in. And again, it personnel, the coaching, again, there's so many different aspects to it that are very, very important to put it all together. And maybe the missing piece is them just sorting around the coaching staff and having a little bit of a different message and different leadership. But who knows what that formula is going to be, because if it's not, then we are also going to be having to have some other conversations that are going to be uncomfortable, like this one that we are about to have right now. And I was waiting for Andrew to come back into full commission for this one, because, again, this is, as we are looking at it, most likely a Scott Boras discussion. Pete Alonso is going back to the free agent market for part 2 of his free agency. Last year did not go well. He kind of had to come back with his tail between his legs and reunite. He ended up having a good bounce back season. And then he's going back out to the market without a qualifying offer attached to him. Now, as for the latest reports, or the first reports that we saw at his upcoming free agency that he has this winter, which we can't really talk about in fully because he's not technically a free agent yet, but we know he will be because he said that he's going to be.
We don't want to be tampering.
I don't know, but anyways, from this report from Mike Puma, the New York Post, he said that Alonso, who turns 31 in December, is expected to seek a contract of at least 7 years. A length that is consistent with his agent, Scott Boras, completed in recent seasons for Marcus Semien and Matt Chapman at the same age. Unlike last offseason, the Mets can't extend another qualifying offer to Alonso. It was that offer Alonso viewed as a significant barrier in his last attempt last winter to secure a long-term agreement. Any team signing Alonso would have required to forfeit at least one draft pick. But a Mets team that is focused on improving defensively will have to decide on a direction. Could Alonso be a primary DH? It is a reality the slugger has acknowledged that is likely at some point in his next contract, according to a source, but it's unclear how soon Alonso would be open to making that change. Now, obviously, we know that eventually, some point in his career, whether it's with the Mets or not, that Alonso eventually will be a DH, probably to preserve more power in his career and extend his career a little bit more. That's what the DH basically is here for, to basically extend careers offensively. But let me just go to Andrew first on this, okay? Let me do a small role play for you, okay? I'm Pete Alonso. You're a GM. I go up to you and I say, with my certain situation, I want a 7-year contract. Straight up, what are you telling me?
And I want Sabrina Carpenter, Dua Lipa, Stephanie Vaquer, and Rhea Ripley to date me. But, some things in life you just can't have. And sometimes those dangerous decisions, that's a dangerous 7 years for an unathletic DH, should be year one of the contract DH. Pete, I appreciate your power upside. I think you are, a very good power hitter. But if you're asking for 7 years, I think the Los Angeles Angels are a perfect fit for you, buddy, because there is not a shot in hell that any well-run, professional, competent organization is going to look at Pete Alonso and go with a long-term commitment. I think there will be teams, like competitive teams like the Mets, maybe even the Yankees, that will look at you, Pete, and say, hey, we will give you a very hefty 4-year deal. If you would like player options in that deal, we are very willing to have that conversation. But if you are looking for Freddie Freeman deals, which, by the way, you had a 7-year offer on the table from the New York Mets, but you decided to wait and get to market. And of course, listen to Scott Boras when you are and the rest of major league markets realizing that top tier talents are the only people getting the big term money. First baseman, I think a perfect example. I know this is different styles of a first baseman, but a guy like Carlos Santana has had a long, productive major league career. He signed a decent contract with the Guardians. Then, they had a different name back then, but every year he's always signing 1-year deals, or maybe he signed a 1+1. And with the position you play, Pete, that's where you have to be. And I understand you want to get term, but especially if the power production continues, which that's what every fan wants. If the power production, he will be able to get the market, get big 1-year deals, big 2+1s, whatever he likes. I understand he wants term, because rightfully so. Everyone should want term. But you're not getting 7 years. 4 years, and I think if desperation, I think there'll be a desperate team that maybe gives you 5. But if you're expecting a 7-year deal and you're using Matt Chapman, one of the best defensive third basemen in the league, who, yes, you're a better overall hitter than, but you couldn't touch him defensively, and a athletic second baseman whose contract the Rangers are already trying to get out of as your 2 comps. I understand, Scott Boras, you play the game. I find it entertaining. I know Frank will at some point in the winter time make fun of his food. There'll be a whole food Frank, segment on the pod at some point. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you do. But again, it's 2025, buddy. I understand you got a big old contract for a DH who plays right field for us, and respectfully, generational talent. One of the best hitters of all time, maybe the best hitter on the planet. Second best. If you want to say, Judge or Ohtani, fine. But that's not Pete Alonso. So the 7-year offer, good luck. If there's an idiot GM in Anaheim or maybe the White Sox, good riddance. But I don't think there will be a functioning, well-run organization running to give Pete Alonso a 7-year deal.
I think it's very, very fair to just say, well, yeah, he's not getting that. It's not going to happen. And to be honest, I could definitely bet a lot on it that he's not going to get it, especially going into a 31-year-old season. we are in a certain point where he has a little bit more of an advantage compared to what it was last offseason. The Mets pretty much had the advantage from every single aspect. They had the qualifying offer. They had, the not so great year that he had last year. I mean, there was a lot of different aspects that was there compared to this year where he is coming off of one of his best years of his career. But again, from the Mets standpoint here, people will say this all the time. They'll ask this question, where would we be without Pete Alonso? Well, what are you with him? What are you with him? And I'm not saying that that's the main point that we need to go off of. And I know everyone's going to go after me and say this is Pete hate. And, we know the Polar Bear Army is going to go after us. But I'm just saying.
No, never.
I'm just saying that you have to look at it from another angle here. This team has collapsed 4 times in the last 5 years. You don't have many options of personnel to change here after an embarrassing showing that you just had this year. So, who are those pivotal pieces? Because I don't know. You have to ask one question. Is Jeff McNeil it? Like that? Is that it? Is that the only change that you make? I don't know. And are you willing to give 7 years or give a big contract to Pete Alonso to find out if he's just enough? I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. Can I throw one little cap nerd? Yeah, one little cap nerd thing before I let Frank go crazy. We now, last offseason, when we could have locked him up long term when that was, like you said, the Mets had every advantage. Now the Mets have a $51 million a year season contract on their books long term, a $25 million a year season for the left-handed starting pitcher. So now they have additional $75 million of long-term money. I mean, Manaea's the year after this year. But think of it as this. Soto, you could have been half of Pete Alonso. And I'm not saying that Mets shouldn't have signed up. I'm just using this as an example. Yeah. Soto money is 2 $25 million players. That's what probably Pete would most likely get. You add that with Manaea, obviously Senga and other guys. So if the Mets weren't willing, when we talked about all offseason last year, the financial books are free. They could sign another long-term deal. They chose one second. That's all. And now you think they're going to do it with a massive cap hit plus another Manaea cap hit. Obviously, we expect them to move some money, but that is something to keep in consideration that the Mets had open books and a homegrown guy, right? That's everyone loves that. You have to keep the homegrown guy. And they had clean books to give him a long-term deal and not have to do with this. And they didn't do it. And now you add the extra close to $100 million of payroll. And now you're going to expect this team to then now pull out the big old long-term deal. Just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah. I mean, listen, they chose Soto, and we knew that they had him lined up for multiple years, obviously. But, the timeline is passed to give what Pete Alonso is asking here. I mean, they offered 7 years, $158 million, which is probably what he's seeking right now, which is pretty sad, isn't it? But I mean, Frank, 7 years to Pete Alonso, 31 years old. Is it like, I don't know about that. I think that's a little, where is he going to get? Who are you going to be bidding against for that? I don't see it. I don't.
There's a lot to go over here. I mean, just kind of one thing at a time. The whole 7-year thing, like I said, it's a tough sell. I mean, you just don't really see it as a realistic thing. And like you said, you can't even say, if you're Pete Alonso, Scott Boras, we offered us like 7 years, whatever the number is before, just offer to us again. It's like, listen, we'll offer you a 7-year deal when you're 29, but we're not offering you 7 years when you're 31. We'll make it 5, and it'll be the same deal. You'll be a free agent the same year. You'll get the same per year, but we're not giving you another 7 when you're 2 years older. That's not how it works. And just in general, no matter who you are, essentially, it's never, ever a good business practice to go 7 years on a player who's past 30. Never. I mean, that's just not a good idea for whatever player you want to give me. There's always risk.
Frank, we have all the money in the world, though.
We have all the money in the world. Father Time is undefeated. So I know Pete Alonso, he does not rely on his athleticism. I'm well aware of that. He's not someone that we're going about, he might become a little slower. Is he going to be able to be as effective? I get it. I mean, he's super durable. He's an Iron Man. Like, I totally get it. But in general, it's never a good practice to go 7 years for someone over 30. Second thing, when you're talking about a 7-year deal, it's also not a good idea to give it to a player who you are going to put in the field, not designated here, you're going to put him in the field, and before even signing the contract, he's a mess defensively. I mean, the guy's arm is a liability. That's just straight facts. And you know what? In the playoffs, when the ball is put in play more often, it becomes more noticeable. It can become more of an issue. It's something that could be a make or break in you winning a championship. We've seen it before in the Mets.
Make or break in us winning a few games this year.
Yeah, it was, and decides the playoffs. I mean, your bat does
make
great
or break
things,
of
but
Kodai Senga's season as well.
Yeah, that too.
Hey, we love our polar bear. Can't say that. Can't say that brutally. Can't brutally honestly say that. Sorry.
Yeah, too. So you have that. You have to think about that as well. You already know, like, man, this is a team that already struggles defensively. I mean, we know in the outfield right now, the corners, not pretty. Third base, if it's Viento's, mess. Everyone doesn't love Francisco Alvarez fans-wise at catcher. So it's like, do we really want to add another poor defender? It's not the greatest idea when you look at the way the rest of the team is assembled. But I think another good point, like you said, well, who is going to offer the 7-year deal? I think one of the things that's really interesting to me is that last offseason, the main second team that was looking at Alonso was the Blue Jays. And it was, what are they going to do with Vlad? They gave Vlad the massive payday, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is playing first base, and they're still in the playoffs right now. So
we're not.
Yeah, it's October. Exactly. Are they more inclined to not go after Pete because they signed Vlad and Vlad's doing wonderful things for them and eliminated the Yankees? Or do they say, we want to go the next step and maybe Pete's that move that gets us over the top? Maybe. It kind of could go either way, but even then, I still don't see them going 7 years either. So it was kind of one of those things where the Mets and Pete found themselves in a situation where it was so late. I mean, spring training was about to get started that they both kind of had to settle. The Mets were like, you know what? All the other first basemen, they've got signed or traded. We don't have many other options left. And those teams signed and traded for all those players that they didn't have a lot of options left. So the Mets and Pete Alonso, by default, were a natural match, and they stuck with it for another season. So we'll see what is the Mets' patience level this time around. Because I got to be honest with you, fans and the Mets should not be doing this whole song and dance again of we're going to let it drag on for months. And it's going to be like, is Pete's thing? Is Pete going? A new team's talking to him. This is the offer he wants now, while other players are going off the board. Because if you pull up this free agent market of this particular offseason, you have a couple of options. It's not like, it's Pete Alonso and there's no other solid first baseman who are both younger and are good baseball players. Like, there are other guys out there. So the Mets are not forced to say, we have to keep Pete. There's no other good first basemen. I understand historically. I totally get it. A bunch of home runs, most in Mets history. I totally understand why fans would want to keep him. However, like you mentioned, Carson, if the team doesn't win, is it the move that really makes you a sustainable winner? Is going 7 years when you already gave a 15-year contract, you've already given a 10-year deal, as well as other multi-year deals that, as you see on this graphic that we have on the screen, they don't expire for a while. Nimmo is here till 2031. Manaea is here till 2028. Like, these are not things that are going to be fixed anytime soon. The one thing they have going for them is that Diaz opted out. Are you going to keep him? Because that's where maybe a $20 million is now not on your books. So maybe. Yeah. And we don't know about that yet. That's a whole other conversation for another episode. But I just think overall, it's not a slam dunk of, we have to get him back no matter what. But on the flip side, I can't say, no matter what, we can't get him, because he came up big in a lot of moments. He got big hits for this team. A lot of times when Pete hits a homer, it puts him ahead. And the guy was great with men on base. No one else could do that. Can a different hitting coach solve that issue with the rest of the team? And you don't need Pete Alonso to be the RBI machine? Maybe, but we don't know that for sure. But what I will say is that when I look at some other guys, I look at a guy like Josh Naylor, who had an OPS over 800 this past season. He's playing in the playoffs right now. I have to consider it. He's younger than Pete Alonso. He's not going to be a 7-year deal. Ryan O'Hearn, he had an OPS over 800. He's younger than Pete Alonso. He's not going to be a 7-year deal. So if Pete Alonso, like, and to Andrew's point, he's not Juan Soto. He's not a 900 OPS guy. He's not a 1,000 OPS guy. He was high 800s. Like, he's a good power hitter. But even this past season, it was not a great power season for him. I mean, his batting average was up. That was good. But overall, the actual production at the end of the season, OPS plus, what were your total numbers? It wasn't like this generational talent. It was not this guy that you could get that kind of production elsewhere. And I think that when you're talking about 7 years for that production, you could get it at a much cheaper cost from these other guys, in my opinion. That's just me. I think that you could get 800 OPS for O'Hearn or Naylor at probably half the cost. And when you're talking about assembling a team that needs a lot of things to be fixed, you got to look at some stuff like that. Do you want to take these massive tax hits? I don't know. I mean, you might have a lockout coming soon. Like, there's a lot of factors that if you're giving a 7-year deal, you got to think about, are you going to be screwed because they're going to institute, let's say, I mean, you have to really think it out here. Let's say the Dodgers win again and they just kind of steamroll and they go and win another World Series. You think all the other owners aren't going on a salary cap going on because the Dodgers spend so much money and they have a ridiculous team that other teams feel they can't compete with?
Yeah.
And you as a team are already way over the salary cap. And now all of a sudden, these moves that you made years ago, you have to make totally different moves to get out of it. It happened in basketball with the Boston Celtics. They won a championship, had to trade a bunch of their guys away because new rules came in with aprons. If that happens in baseball, all of a sudden you got to undo moves and you don't get the value that you do because you're forced to trade them. You lose the leverage. So if you're a team that's already in a bad spot financially, the uncertainty of what's going to happen in baseball is up in the air. I can't say like, oh, let's just give a bunch of 7-year deals and have a ridiculous payroll. You don't know what's going to happen going forward. So
factors.
Yeah, there's other safe routes they could go. We've talked about so many times. Boris loves opt-outs, you know. I mean, you want to do like a Bregman deal, crazy AV 3-year deal with some opt-outs. I mean, that's what they did.
She's not going to be seeking this time.
But that's what they did this time. It wasn't a 1-year deal. It was a multi-year deal with opt-outs, and he opted out. So do they want a 5 with them opt-outs? Do they want a 7 with some opt-outs? I mean, I don't know. I mean, do they want to get very cute in the language? You hit certain thresholds, these years become guaranteed. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go, but still, it's just not this automatic move. And even something like this, but you go Naylor plus a Bellinger. I mean, we got something to talk about here. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that is intriguing to me. You get both of their production combined compared to Jose Siri and Alonso or Cedric Mullins and Alonso. You might have a better lineup when it's all said and done.
Yeah, it may be a little bit deeper as well. Maybe taking some pressure off of the young guys as well. I mean, there could be a point, you know, where you have these complementary pieces. You have plenty of these guys producing all at the same time, and it's not a top-heavy lineup where, you know, in Game 15 of the season of 162, we have guys like Starling Marte batting cleanup. So again, when you talk about, you know, the whole construction of the team, we can sell constantly over and over and over again. Who's going to give you 120 RBIs? Who's going to give you 40 home runs? Who's going to get? Well, again, what do they do with that? It's not to Pete Alonso's fault. I'm not saying that it is his fault, but they don't win. They don't win. So why are you paying the extra money to continue to possibly not win? And I'm not saying that they won't win in the future, but I'm also saying that we have a good sample of this team collapsing, whether it's offensively. See, we're not just talking about 2025. We've seen multiple years where the pitching was good. That they have collapsed many, many times. It's happened. And nobody's going to sit here and tell me and try to work around these things. You collapse if you don't make the playoffs with the richest payroll in all of baseball. I don't want to hear it. It's just, I mean, that whole entire mentality of, well, he's our guy. We got to keep him forever. Well, like, again, how does that treat for the rest of the team? Because we're Mets fans. We're not just Pete Alonso fans. We want the whole team to succeed. And when you have Juan Soto and Lindor and Nimmo and all of these guys making this top money, you're going to have other components to the team, and it's going to bring down the depth of the team. And when it comes to 7 years, again, you're not getting it. Andrew, I'll cue you back into this one. It's like the constant mentality of how Mets fans view Pete Alonso. He's been one of the best players in this franchise history. He's been one of the best hitters they've developed. No one's denying that. But from the outside that it's being viewed from, when people say this, there's like, well, if you don't give Pete 7 years, someone else will. Let him.
Let him. And again, and let's even. Oh, and this is what infuriates me. It's not infuriating. I understand the fans' perspective, but the fact is like, well, he's homegrown. You have to pay him. Freddie Freeman is playing for the Los Angeles Dodgers right now. Albert Pujols played for the Angels and the Dodgers. Like, enough with this. Oh, you have to have homegrown players. I just want good players. Do I care if they come from the White Sox, the Mets, the Dominican Republic, San Diego? You pick them up at Costco? No, I just want good players. So I understand Pete Alonso is a good player. He is a good player. He's a flawed player. And you can't tell me from David Stearns' press conference where he's out here screaming about run prevention that's not one indication of what he wants to do. And you're gonna tell me that David Stearns is gonna use his fan card like or Steve Cohen's gonna take over because, well, again, could Cohen pull an Artie Moreno? Could be. I doubt it. I would think he would just let Stearns do his job. But again, is there a way that maybe Cohen just goes up behind him and Artie Moreno's and give him a contract? Sure. But you have to build, like we said, and I think Frank talked about it. Like, if you're telling me I can get a Naylor and either a Bellinger or maybe, we'll see what happens with some other guys. You add some more defenders, and we'll say Bellinger just because of run prevention. You're telling me I get a
Grisham. You want to do more?
I just hate saying two lefties. This team is so left-handed. That's one of the problems. I know that's that's a video for this Alonso content, and there'll be a video coming. My problem is like, okay, a lot of solutions are very left-handed.
You want to say Suarez and Grisham? You want to say that combination?
Well, I guess Gino doesn't run.
You could also take money from what you would have given Alonso. Obviously, would be more of a deciding factor. What happens with Edwin Diaz, who I think is going to opt out of that contract? You could just be like, oh well, let's just do let's do similar to what the Phillies did and let's get two bats. Let's get two big bats. Let's get a DH and a first baseman on this market that isn't Pete Alonso.
Yeah. So don't forget too, like, it's a different situation, but Conforto, all jokes aside, he had that 5-year, $100 million offer, didn't take it, never got it again. And Pete,
and he was worth $300 million.
Yeah. But Pete, he gets offered $7, and now he's probably not getting the $7 again. Like, that happens. Like, that's part of the game. So it's not so much that, like, if he was offered $7, he's going to get offered again, especially 2 years later. It's not going to happen. Doesn't matter how good you play. Years are years. If you want to cut down the years, up the money, you can. But like I said, there's still some long-term risk that is involved with that.
And this is the fear that I have. M. Easy says it in the chat right here. They're going to scream and holler at Cohen and Stearns at Mets fan appreciation event this offseason about Alonso, like they did last time. And I'm not going to lie. I did feel like the Mets, I did feel like Mets fans kind of bullied Steve Cohen into bringing back Alonso last year. I'm not going to lie. I really do think that they did, that they got under his skin a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
And like we talked about, the Mets had the benefit.
I can't see giving him a 7-year deal because fans are pushing the owner to do so. That's not good business. It isn't. It's not smart business. No matter if Cohen is worth $20 billion or $20, that's just awful business. Awful. If you want to add. Andrew?
Yeah, and like it was kind of a perfect storm because we obviously did the Fan Fest in like January, so after Christmas. Alonso's still out there, and again, like we talked about earlier, he had the qualifying offer attached to him. There was that limited interest. I think there were some guys talking about it in the chat, and we brought up Bellinger, and this is again more of an external thing, but maybe it does relegate to talk to Alonso. Let's say, okay, you sign Alonso or sign Bellinger, let's say. Does that maybe take the Yankees and say, okay, you taking our plan A, maybe that's their plan B? I do think, again, there are going to be teams that would be interested, like the 3 or 4 year. I think there will be teams interested. The 7 year is not happening. but it also is going to see how Alonso takes this, because he can't drag this out again. Because if he does it again, and we saw last year, because there are some guys, and there's only a couple guys on the market, on the free agent market, there are a decent group of trade targets, that again, video coming soon, that could potentially be filled. But it's interesting because maybe does he do what Blake Snell did? Goes out the first year, sits on the market, and had the qualifying offer tapped, sat on the market. Does he maybe jump at the first decent offer he gets? Again, we'll see. I mean, they could ask for the 7-year deal, but again, once we get to the GM meetings and everyone just says, "Lol, no thanks," how fast does Boris and him take this? Because again, could he be like Snow, where he just says, I'm not sitting out here waiting till mid-February, a week before spring training, pitching and catching supposed to report, and I still don't know where I'm going. And I'm very intrigued to see again where that goes, and do the Mets again, like Frankie talked about, how aggressive are they early? Because I think you have to kind of make the move. Murakami, we're going to talk about the 2 Japanese guys that could be posted. That's only a 45-day window. Are you going to be in that market? Okay, you have to know are you staying with the Alonso thing? Are you going after one of those 2? Again, you have 2 major league all-star caliber first basemen. What's that going to be? And let's say the Yankees sign Naylor, let's say. Let's say Naylor's signed winter meetings. Let's say both O'Hearn and Naylor are done at the winter meetings first week of December. Alonso's still out there. Now you're pitting up, okay, how aggressive do the Mets do? Now it's just going to be interesting how Boris takes this. But if it's like Boris always does, it's going to drag out. That helps the Mets, but also it depends if the Mets get aggressive elsewhere. You could open up other suitors, like I said, with the Yankees. Maybe if Bregman is an option. Again, I don't think that is, but let's say the Mets do maybe want Bregman. Maybe that brings the Red Sox into conversation. So I do think whatever
with Boston,
pivot move,
with the Yankees,
it could be a pivot move. Let's say if you, but it's also, again, if you make a pivot move, you might open up a team you didn't expect to be in the Alonso market, pops in the Alonso market because you took their plan A off. So there is that kind of wait and see, and I want to see how aggressive either Alonso is with teams, or if teams are actually truly interested in a DH first baseman in 2025. Just an interesting thing.
I don't know. It's going to be odd to see because there's definitely different stakes than it was last year. And no, I don't mean the the dinner. I mean the situation here where the Mets obviously had a lot of advantage last year, but there's going to be some more advantage to Pete, obviously coming off of the year that he just came off of, which again is not a historic year, but it was a really good season that you obviously want to have in a contract year. And it was obviously good enough for him to say that he was going to opt out. To be honest, if he had a repeat of 2024, I still thought he was going to opt out anyway. But again, when it came to the thought of, let's say, $27 million that he ended up making, I think that's pretty much in the boat of what he's probably going to be making, but for multiple years. Again, the season that he had, it would have been worth almost $29 million. So again, it lined up fairly well. Not to mention he had $30 million plus a signing bonus or whatever. So again, that type of market is going to be the same type of thing with his certain AV. It's all really just about the years that he ends up getting. With him being 31 and not 29, like Josh Naylor's 29, 28. Again,
28. Yeah, I'm pretty sure 28.
And to be honest, I would see a situation where how this dragged out as much as it did last winter, I would not be surprised. I'm not going to lie, where we get to the winter meetings and the Mets just signed Josh Naylor with Pete Alonso still available. I wouldn't be surprised if that ended up happening. And people will sit there and try to reason with it and say, well, this guy could be the DH and be the first. Nope. Josh Naylor is going to be your first baseman. So again, I don't know how they're going to approach this. Could they be like, oh, well, we're sick of this shit. We're not going to do this again. It's not going to happen again. All the chips were falling into place last time. They're not for us this time. We'll see. I don't know. I have no clue. I will welcome Pete Alonso back with open arms. However, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, I'm not thinking of any other alternative. You have to think of another alternative. So again, you can't just sit here and say Pete Alonso is guaranteed to come back, because there's a possibility where he doesn't. And whether fans take that well or not, like, again, the business side of baseball, Pete knows that too, because he hired Scott Boras. So it's not like it's the full on 100% emotional attachment here. And I get that fans care about Alonso. They like Alonso. He's a fan favorite here. He has been for 7 years. But like, again, it's the business side of baseball. It's heartless. And a big specifically that you want to go to. If you want to be specific here, Freddie Freeman, again, homegrown guy, fan favorite. They didn't bring him back. They moved on. I'm not saying the Mets have to do it. But if the ask is 7 years from the very beginning, and they're not budging on it at a certain amount of time, enjoy LA, Pete. Enjoy Toronto. Enjoy San Francisco. Wherever you're going to go. Enjoy Boston. I don't know what to tell you, because there's no full-on motivation for me to just sit here and say, oh, yeah, we need to completely run this back. I'll have motivation if he were to come back and say, well, new coaches, new approach, maybe we can maximize this better. But if they go in a different direction, I would not blame them. Because, again, the fact is this team has collapsed 4 times in 5 years with him as one of the heads of it. And I'm not saying he's the problem. So don't say that out of context. But again, that's just how this rolls. Again, like I said, is getting rid of Jeff McNeil, of the 2 flexible guys that could go, McNeil and Alonso, with all these other core members locked down, is just getting rid of McNeil and retaining Alonso enough? Is it? I don't know. Who knows? Who knows if it's enough? Andrew, if there's anything you want to add?
Well, I guess we'll just end with this. We see the article, what was it, last week or whatever? It seemed like Pete Alonso was ready to strangle, David Stern, saying, hey, I'm gonna hit 500 homers with you or without you. So, Pete, if you're already, have your mind off of not being a New York Met, good luck, bud. Again, go get that. Go get that 7-year offer, and then come back.
Yep.
We'll see where it is. Go fishing.
Again, I don't know. It's possible, and there's plenty of factors to consider. Another factor that can be considered, he's saying, don't be surprised if teams clutch up their wallets with the pending lockout coming. There's gonna be a possibility where that does happen, where other stipulations will probably bring back the average cost that we've been seeing in free agency of these long-term deals or long-term AAVs. Or I don't think a salary cap helps anything whatsoever. In fact, I think it makes the product worse. But again, and I think that a salary floor is what they need, but that's a completely different conversation that we don't have time for. But again, I'm not going to sit here and say my only plan A and plan only is Pete Alonso. I can't sit there and do that. I can't. Has nothing to do with Pete Alonso personally. It's not like I hate him as a player, hate him as a person. I don't. But there is a point of the matter is this team keeps underachieving. What pieces are you going to change? And if it comes at the cost of Pete Alonso not hitting 500 home runs for his individual stat line as a Met, they're going to have to make that decision. And I know that it's not going to sit well with people. And everyone will turn to, well, we let Jose Reyes go, and we let Daniel Murphy go, and we let all these guys. If the team doesn't win, is it worth another 7 years? And like we said, with the other factor we can add in here, Pete Alonso is eventually going to be a DH. Eventually. And you're probably going to be paying him, what, $28 million? Not DH money to be a DH eventually. And the back half of that. So then you're going to have another situation where you have an overpaid DH. Because I don't think anybody wanted Starling Marte to be the DH on this team, right? He was getting paid $20 million to do so. These are things you got to think about. This is the thing there's the types of things they got to think about of what are they going to do with this type of investment? Are they going to make this type of investment into Pete Alonso long term because he likes being here and he's got the home run record and everything? Or are they going to give him a long-term investment or a short-term investment because they think he can help the team win and improve the dynamic of the team? And it could be a negotiation tactic. It could, like Game 4 is saying, but how long are they going to hold out on that? Because I don't think the Mets are going to wait it out the way that they did last winter. I don't think so. Maybe that changes. Maybe the field changes. But I don't think the Mets are going to sit here and be constantly exhausted, wondering what's going to happen with Pete Alonso as they're just sitting there as the hours tick by to spring training. It's not going to happen again. You know how I know it's not going to happen again? Because at FanFest, Pete Alonso said, this was worse than Juan Soto's negotiations. That's how I know that they're not going to wait this thing out to spring training again. Because if you're worse than Juan Soto in negotiations after he got $765 million and possibly $800 million, I don't know if he's exaggerating or anything. We weren't there for the negotiations, obviously. But like he said, fully publicly calling it out. I don't think that they're going to wait this thing out because I think the circumstance is going to flip a little bit. And we can go after David Stearns all we want, and we can go after this or that. Pete Alonso being a homegrown Met is not the number one selling point for them continuing to keep him. I don't know what to tell you. I have no idea what to tell you. But it's whatever. And again, we're going to talk about it, I'm sure, a bunch of times throughout this offseason whenever we get any updates regarding what goes with Pete Alonso. But we'll see how they do it. Again, I am fine with going either direction. I've made it public plenty of times. I am fine if they want to make any sort of deep changes because what they've been doing either hasn't been sustaining, it has not been working. That's pretty much it. Frank, I'll go to you on any last comments you have. I mean, we've got maybe a week to go before the offseason officially, week or two to go before the offseason officially starts. Yeah. Couple of weeks. So we're going to be talking about, some little things, obviously, internally, but we're getting close to big decisions being made. So we'll see what happens. And we need changing after what we just saw in 2025.
No, I mean, we do. And listen, you have to wonder, how does last year's offseason, affect their approach? They saw just about everything be a failure outside of Juan Soto. Everything else did not go well. And some of these guys are still here. I mean, Sean Manaea stands out on this graphic. The third highest paid player on the team after Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. It seems kind of crazy with the season that he had this year. But, I mean, that is the reality. So, are you maybe a little more hesitant, not just kind of throwing out money to anybody? Maybe go a little bit of a different approach, maybe go the quantity over quality approach. Are you doubling down? Are you saying, you know what, even though we paid this guy a lot of money, we still have to address this position for starting pitching, for example? Or it's like, you know what, we've already invested so much, we're going to focus elsewhere. I just wonder how poorly last offseason went and the trade deadline too. How does that affect their approach? Does that change it at all? Or are they just going to kind of go same route, try to keep the same team for the most part and not really look at as many external options?
We'll see. Again, I don't know what direction they ended up going in, but I do want to see a significant amount of change, and I'm hoping that this roster looks completely different. Andrew, obviously not in your usual setup, but you ready for your big This is your time of the year. So get ready.
Yeah, what do you mean? This is my original YouTube set. This is the old, when the Mets content started. This is the setup. But yeah, again, once that last out's put away from the World Series, I mean, I've already got about 6-7 videos ready, booked, ready to go. So we got once that last out championship celebration, as soon as that champagne's popped, I'm already ready to go. And again, yeah, like Frank said, we'll see what the approach is, what Stearns learned having a full 2 years in the job and see a positive year, a negative year. Well, now it's year 3. You had your great 1, you had your terrible 2s. What do you got for your 3? You're 3 years old now, Stearns. Come on, let's see what you're going to do. You again star hunt? You building depth? Again, you have some prospects coming, but again, you can't bank on them 100%. But again, we'll see. And obviously, we got to keep Pete Alonso. He should beat Tubby Polar Bear. We can't lose the March.
I'm not even going to get into that. Okay, we're going to end it off here. Obviously, again, plenty to talk about throughout the entire offseason. We just scratched the surface. Hopefully, we never talk about Eric Chavez ever again. Let's hope Jeff Albert is the second coming of Jesus. And this Pete Alonso thing has a quicker resolution than it did last year. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation live in the future, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel. Turn on those post notifications to not miss when we go live. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for other content over there. Follow all of us individually. And finally, let's go Mets. We're going to wait out the rest of this season, and then the Mets have got to get to work. And we will see you guys next time.